Welcome to Brew Crime, where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host.
It's a JT.
And as we continue our Angels of Death series, we have a guest host again today.
Hi, I am not an angel of death, but it's Terry from True Crime and Wine Time.
Yes, no, you're not. We hope.
He shoots cubic arrow through your heart
I say, I am a love angel.
There we go.
of death. You slay me every day.
Okay, just do the crawfish crawl. Keep trying.
I'll grab my shovel and I'll just.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The last two episodes have been awful cases, and today's going to be no different, unfortunately. That's what you get when you pick Angels of Death as a series.
Yeah, whose idea was that?
I'm going to blame...
It was me.
JT.
Okay, we'll blame JT. It was JT.
It was JT. It was Terry, but I'm blaming JT.
I'm not smart enough to think up that topic myself. It just couldn't have happened. Not a thing.
Yeah.
I'll take the blame. I learned of a case in Texas, and I honestly thought it was going to be an anomaly. I didn't think there would be anything else close to being as horrific, and I was wrong.
You were wrong, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully hospitals get better. And my case is more historical, so things hopefully are getting better.
So maybe ours learned from your case.
Oh, great.
I really
maybe
hope
things
they
are getting
did.
better.
Maybe. I guess I'll start with the title of my case.
The
Demon Midwife of Tokyo.
awesomely terrible.
What are you drinking to go with that? I don't think I heard what you were drinking.
So I'm definitely breaking away from beer for this episode because, well, I could actually get some Japanese craft beer if I went into the city of Vancouver. I said, screw it. And I went with sake. So I'm having the Hakatsuru, I think is what the brand name is. It's a dry sake. It's 15% alcohol. It actually is made in Japan. I was having trouble finding one that was a reasonable price and that wasn't made in bloody California. There were so many Californian ones here.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
We like a cultural appropriation. It's what we do.
I also love, like, this is a big bottle, 750 milliliters. So that's
Oh wow,
more than 20 ounces. I don't know exactly what it is, but it was $10. So like, that's
really?
like $8 for you probably, or something like that.
Yeah,
Super cheap. I couldn't believe it. It is crystal clear.
Oh wow.
I'm not sure what color they usually are, but it's crystal clear.
No, it's usually like that.
It's usually like that. The only sake I've ever had is in restaurants where you do the whole sake thing and you like hit the table and you scream sake and you drink it.
I don't know.
Scream
And
sake it to me.
It always looks like water.
Yeah, it could be dangerous that way.
Being me, I would drink a water and they would just think I was drinking the sake.
Ha-ha.
The weird part, like this one, I don't know what they're supposed to smell or taste like, but this one almost has like a lemony citrus aroma.
Oh.
So it could almost think it was water with just like some lemon in it,
like
or
a
something.
sparkling water with lemon.
It doesn't have that. Sparkling water has an aroma. Like, I don't know what exactly it is, but sparkling water always has a bit of an aroma to me. This doesn't have that, and it is not sparkling. This is just a flat wine.
17% alcohol by
or
volume
15,
is not
15.
bad. Or 15. That's not
But yeah,
bad.
it's kind of a lemony flavor. It's got definitely a boozy flavor in there. It kind of tastes like a watered down spirit almost than it does like a wine or a beer kind of. It's not bad. I probably wouldn't buy it again, but I'm not into this style of drink, but it really fit with the case. And, sometimes you have to take one for the team.
You do. And you know what? You've got to pair something different with the case. So I appreciate you taking one for the team.
Exactly. And, it's nice and strong, so I can stop thinking about this case.
Fair.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go.
All right. This case cannot be discussed without first talking about Japan after September 2nd, 1945. Does this date ring a bell for anyone? It should.
Yes. Sure does. December 7th?
No, September 2nd. September 2nd,
September 2nd.
1945.
I would have to give that a goog.
September 2nd, 1945 was the day that Japan officially surrendered to the Allies to end their involvement in World War II.
See, here's the thing you got to know about Americans. We don't like to acknowledge the see, I don't even remember what it was called. We don't like to acknowledge that. Yes. Well, no, we don't like to acknowledge the surrender because that implies that war is over. Therefore, the war machine can't be fed. So that's not a thing we acknowledge.
It's not good for our economy.
They found a Cold War to go after afterwards. So they kept the war machine going.
I know a hot one. Yeah. I like a lukewarm one. You know, like
and then there was Canadian bacon and, if you've ever watched that movie.
I love Canadian bacon.
The movie or the food?
Oh, I didn't know there was a movie. I like the food.
It's not actually a thing in Canada.
Okay, is it not? Really?
It's just ham.
Ham. It's called ham.
Canadian Bacon is a really good movie with John Candy and a bunch of like other really famous actors of that era in the comedy scene. And it's when the Cold War ends, the United States needs a new Cold War. So it's them starting a Cold War with Canada.
I'm gonna have to write that down because
awesome.
HH would probably like that.
Oh, it's super funny. And I don't even like a lot of older movies, but it's super funny. But this isn't. Emperor Hirohito announced the surrender on August 15th, 1945, but it took a little bit to officially sign. Life was already hard in Japan as bombings had been taking out train tracks, disrupting shipping of goods during the war. Then there were the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and Nagasaki on August 9th.
Yeah.
The nation was dealing with a famine and mass poverty, all parts of the horror of war, and likely part of the occupation and reconstruction of Japan between 1945 and 1952. This is when the United States and the Allies, led by General Douglas A. MacArthur, enacted a widespread military, political, economic, and social reform. So, yeah.
Things sounds like racism to me. But okay, keep going.
I bet they removed that from the history books because
that'll happen.
Yeah. This is all to say that life was not good for Japanese people after World War II.
No.
There was also another issue that happened post-war. Many men came back from the front lines to their sweethearts, and the Japanese baby boom began.
Ah, yes. That's what happens.
Yeah. Marriages had been postponed due to war, as well as the fact that people were just trying to have some normalcy after the horrors of war, right? I mean, there's a lot of men coming back with PTSD, and they're just trying to like get back into
fake it till they could make it.
Yeah, exactly. So, sex leads to babies, as we all know, and after war, it can lead to tons of babies.
It does what? That's how that works?
Yeah, right?
I didn't know that's how that worked.
Japan's birth rate spiked to about 2.6 million babies born a year between 1947 and 1949. This is
a year?
Yes. That is 7.8 million babies born into crushing poverty and famine. And I do not need to say that is a ton of babies.
That's a lot of babies.
A lot of babies. Especially born into horrendous situation, right?
Already.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot of babies.
Also, abortion was highly illegal in Japan, so people of no means could not afford to raise a baby as they struggled to just feed themselves and possibly the kids they already had.
I thought we were talking about Japan, but I guess you've moved to like Texas. I'm confused.
I was thinking Alabama. I don't know.
Oh, Alabama, Tennessee.
Yeah. In Japan, did they allow birth control?
It doesn't sound like it at that point. No.
I was excited because in Catholic families back then, you didn't. Yeah. It was against the rules.
No, next line is sacred. Literally, it was even severely punished if you did anything to prevent a pregnancy.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I read that is not allowing birth control, condoms.
It's like Texas.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Don't pick a sheep, those kind of things.
So this is the situation that Japan found itself in post-war era, and it would lead to the worst female serial killer in Japanese history. Miyuki Ishikawa was born on February 5th, 1897 in the village of Honjo in the Miyazaki prefecture. And I think I have those right. And if I don't,
Yeah.
my apologies. I'm
do.
awful at even English, really. So
At
try.
Mike, not Terrier.
No,
JT.
Mike, you had them right. You got them right.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
I always worry about doing cases in countries where the language is so different because I'm like, oh, fuck. Like Iceland?
Yeah.
Ooh.
You
Oh,
can't even speak
uh,
English properly.
Yeah, no, I
so-
know, right? She was born to a wealthy family, and that would make her very privileged as a woman in Japan at that time. In 1914, she would move to Tokyo, where she would attend Tokyo Imperial University.
Wow.
This was a big deal.
They let her go to university.
Yeah, at the time, only women in very wealthy families were able to get an education in Japan. So,
Yeah, that's huge.
yeah, it's huge, right? If she wasn't extremely rich, she would be a homemaker and not allowed to learn
Should
anything.
be having those babies.
Yeah, her only education was be to probably raise kids and cook and clean and yada yada yada. Especially at this time, her education would lead her to become a midwife, and she would graduate on September 30th, 1919. So I could not find a reason why, but it was mentioned multiple times that she would have a hysterectomy at some point.
Mm-hmm.
This only matters as she would get married to Takeshi Ikasawa, a former military sergeant and police officer, and they would not be able to have children of their own together. So Miyuki would adopt Takeshi's son from a former marriage, and they would also adopt 3 other children. And I hope things turned out better for these kids.
I have a quick question.
Oh yeah,
In Japan, do you go to university to become a midwife? Or she just went to university but actually became a midwife separate from her studies?
it seems like yes.
Okay.
There probably was people acting as midwives, I would guess, that didn't have educations,
Okay.
but she was working. I'll get to it, but she was working in a hospital, so
Okay.
probably at that point, yes.
She was using her education.
Yes.
Okay.
Miyuki would get a job at the Katabuki Maternity Hospital, and things looked to be going really well. She would rise through the ranks as a midwife and make her way all the way to director of the hospital.
Wow.
She was a highly regarded midwife for good reason. That is until she wasn't.
It's usually the way it works.
Yeah.
Yep.
Late in World War II, things would begin to fall apart for the nation on all fronts. With more and more people having children with absolutely no means to deal with them, more and more children were being dropped off at maternity hospitals. People would drop their youngest off at the maternity hospitals with the hope that they could keep their older children alive. So it's absolutely heartbreaking.
That is.
Yeah. That's like,
How do you pick and choose your kid? Oh,
there's no good option, right? These
There's
people are in
not.
crushing poverty. They might die themselves just because they can't put food on the table or a roof over their head.
oh.
Yeah, it's awful. At the same time, there was absolutely no budget for these hospitals to deal with the influx of children. Miyuki Ishikawa had hard decisions to make about what to do with all these children, as there were no foster parents to take them. Unfortunately for these babies, she would make a heartbreaking decision. She would decide that the best thing to do for everyone involved would be to neglect these children. We're
Yeah, that
talking
sounds about right.
extreme neglect.
Okay. Just neglect them and okay.
So other midwives would become so disillusioned that they would quit their jobs, even with the lack of work in Japan. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
This neglect to death would begin in 1946. And to make things even worse, Miyuki would bring her husband Takeshi and a doctor, Shiro Nakayama, on to help deal with all the deaths of these babies. There was method to the madness, though, as Miyuki and her husband would start running a scam with the parents of these abandoned toddlers.
Mm-hmm.
There it is.
Yeah, they would extort large sums of money out of them using the logic this money would be cheaper than actually raising the children. It's like these parents are dropping these kids off because they have no money, and they are extorting large sums of money from them.
And then
Yep.
they're not even using that money to
Oh, yeah.
feed the children and take
Not
care
a
of
not a
them.
fucking dime. It's going to these kids. Not
So
a
when you
dime.
say neglect, they were basically starving them to death.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Now, the doctor was brought on for a totally different and maybe even more nefarious reason. Shiro was tasked with falsifying the death certificates of the children that died due to neglect. Needed to, make up a reason that these kids were dying.
Yeah, you
like
can't say
crazy.
you're starving them, right?
No, not at all. The killing of babies through neglect and extortion of their parents would go on from 1946 all the way to 1948.
3 years?
Yep. The scheme would finally fall apart on January 12th, 1948, when 2 police officers would happen upon the remains of 5 children. When the bodies were taken to the morgue, autopsies were undertaken, and it was found that all 5 died not due to natural causes. So these 5 bodies were found at the Kotobuki Maternity Hospital. There were 7 other infants at the hospital at the time, although 2 would pass away soon after they were recovered, as all had been terribly neglected. Terribly neglected, yeah. So the police investigation would lead them to all 3 accomplices. If you thought this was bad already, this is where things get worse. Through the investigation, they would end up searching a temple locally and find another 30 toddlers' bodies buried there. They would also find another 40 bodies at a local mortician's house. One source
Holy
said
shit.
that there were ashes from about 40 babies at the mortician's. Others said bodies, so I'm not really sure.
Jesus.
Yeah. Regardless, this is absolutely disgusting and disturbing.
Yep.
Of all these corpses, all of them died the same way as the original 5 infants that were found.
And this woman couldn't have kids of her own.
Nope.
And yet,
Although she did
She
raise
obviously-
4.
okay.
Oh man.
Yeah. Like I said, it's worse. The 3 would obviously end up in court, where they would try and blame the parents for abandoning the children. Many in Japan would even back up this assertion also. They would also admit absolutely no blame for the murders.
I mean, I'm sure if you're that family and you made the hard decision to give up a child to save
Yeah.
your other children and yourself, are you going to go and dispute
Yeah.
that? I mean,
And these parents, if they had any other option,
right.
wouldn't have had this child. There wouldn't be all these children neglected to death. Like, there wouldn't be all these murders.
You made them give you money that you didn't
Yeah.
have.
Exactly. Which probably led to more deaths.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now something has to be mentioned before we get to the sentencing. This is a quote from Murderpedia. I couldn't figure out what the actual source was because Murderpedia is really bad about giving sources. So, quote, Japanese tradition also disputed the rights of infants. Cases of infanticide by a parent had been typically regarded as bodily injury resulting in death under the Criminal Code of Japan until 1907. So there wasn't a lot of rights for infants at the time. So are you getting a bad feeling yet about their sentencing?
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Okay, can you guess how many years all 3 got for the estimated to be between 103 and 169 dead infants?
Life.
Although the
Life is the
charges-
only option. Life.
Now, they were, of course, only charged for 5, but they had all those bodies. What about you, JT? What do you think?
What? How long?
Yeah, how long? Not
A
how
year.
much you think, but how much did they get?
A year or 5, somewhere in there.
If you said 8 years for Miyuki and Takeshi and 4 years for the doctor, Shiro, you'd be correct.
Not long enough.
No. Even more disgusting, they would appeal on October 16th, and on April 28th, 1952, their sentences would be reduced to 4 years for Miyuki and 2 years for her husband. So the charges would not even be for murder, but murder by omission. So in 1969, already out of prison, Miyuki would be interviewed by a Japanese magazine where she would claim that she was innocent of the murder of the 5 children. She would take up selling soap, cream, and fish when she got out of prison. Her husband would also die before this interview took place. But she was doing fine now, and she was running a real estate office in Tokyo, and she would even boast that she had built a large tomb 2 years prior for her and her husband. She would die a free woman on May 30th, 1987, never having to truly pay for the murder of more than 100 babies.
There was no consequences.
No, not at all.
That's 100 lives, and you get,
Yeah,
wow.
4 years in the end. Her former lawyer was also quoted as saying he believed she had earned over 100 million yen since leaving prison. So I did some conversions. It's probably not right, but this is the best I could do. So if we consider that to be as of 1987, we can convert that to 123.3 million yen today. From this, we can find that she made about 911,000 US dollars.
After serving the 4 years.
Yeah. I find it disgusting that she got to just live a great and full life after just letting toddlers wither away and die. People like defenseless toddlers.
What happened to her children, the ones that they were raising?
Never.
Did they live?
I never another.
Okay. So she
note
didn't
about
starve her own children that she adopted. She only starved other people's children.
And I'm guessing with all the money they were extorting from these parents, they were able to raise their kids without them having to really suffer.
Probably pretty well.
Yeah. If you could ever say that something good came out of all this horror, there is one bright spot. 6 months after the 3 arrests, laws would begin to change. Now, things would take some time to become less gross, but here we go. July 13th, 1948, Japan would pass the Mother's Body Protection Act, also titled the Eugenic Protection Act. The best way to explain how this law worked is found in the next quote. From the eugenic point of view, it aims to prevent the birth of inferior offspring as well as to protect maternal life and health. Now, of course, this law was really less about protecting mothers, but it really just trying to make poor people procreate less. But it did lead to legal abortion for economic reasons on June 24th, 1949.
Mm-hmm.
So still today, abortion is not fully legal, as there are so many caveats, and insurance doesn't cover the abortions either. But at least there are options for mothers who are unable to raise a child.
Yeah.
So while Miyuki Ishikawa is absolutely a monster and a serial killer, I think it would be wrong to not also bring Takeshi, her husband, and Shiro Nakayama, the doctor, into this also. Well, it sounds like Miyuki was in charge of the actual neglect and death. These two men were absolutely complicit, and it should also be mentioned as serial killers in my books.
Agreed.
Yep.
Killing helpless babies is probably the most disgusting thing anyone could do.
Yeah.
Because these are toddlers, like these are like newborn babies, right?
They don't eat that much.
No.
I mean, if they're infants, we're talking 8 ounces at the most every 16 hours.
Yeah.
So under 20 ounces a day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really disgusting.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and that's they know about up to 169 babies. But is that
There's
it?
more than that.
Probably. It's 3 years. This is one hospital. There's definitely lots of different places. There was babies being dropped off in mass. Like I said, like there was, how many babies a year did I say again?
2 point something million.
Yeah. So that's just so many babies.
Birth
And
control.
the country is small. They have a big population, but it's a very small country.
Wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there is other stories like this in Japanese history of babies en masse being neglected horribly, but that was it for the demon midwife of Tokyo. Bit of a shorter case, but really, really, really awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, not justifying what she did, she took a bad situation and instead of making it a smidge better,
Yeah.
just made it worse and profited off of it.
Yeah. And I mean, you know what? Even if she tried, they might have died anyways because there was no budget. But she didn't try.
But she didn't even try.
No, she had no intention of trying to help these babies survive.
No.
I mean, and this is going to sound so horrible, and I don't mean it to. It would have been different if she would have done there's no money to feed them. So you found a way to end their life without torturing them.
Yeah.
I mean, not that that would have been okay either, but you tortured
But at least they're
them.
not. At least they're not being tortured and
They're
suffering.
screaming.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can hear them crying.
Yeah, it's awful.
That's
Like I said,
thanks, Mike.
you're welcome. Sorry, I didn't pick the
Not
theme.
really.
And the fact that she asked them for money.
Yeah, no, that just makes
On
it next
top of
level
it.
awful. Yeah, this is someone who should have rotted in prison for the rest of their life.
Yeah. I mean,
All three of them, but
all three of them.
yeah, Yeah. It's nothing. But at least the doctor didn't appeal. I mean, their
Well-
sentence wasn't long enough, but at least they didn't appeal. They actually served their entire sentence,
Yeah. Oh,
which was only 4 years, but still.
I don't get because I always, and maybe it's just my lack of knowledge. I would have thought in Japan the laws would have been tougher. On
Yeah,
killing
unfortunately, they just didn't. It's one of those things, right? I mean, unfortunately, we see this in the United States right now. The unborn child has all the rights, and as soon as they're born, they've got no fucking rights.
That's
Yep.
why our
Yep.
foster care system is full of children and
Yep.
we're forcing it to fill up more.
Underfunded,
Overhaul.
overfilled.
Oh,
Yep. And I mean, unfortunately, what is happening right now, especially in the southern United States, is probably going to lead to more people like this.
it is.
For sure.
It is. And because unfortunately in the United States, if you're not, there goes my dog's barking, a perfectly white baby, your chances of getting adopted immediately are slimmer
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I believe
because
it, for
everybody
sure.
wants that perfect child.
Ugh.
And if you're not
Doesn't exist.
white, you're probably going to end up spending a lot of your life in prison after being in those situations because that's kind of what the pipeline is set up for.
Well, I'm sad to say, I don't think we've learned anything from history.
No, history fucking repeats itself so often.
It does.
Yep.
And if you don't talk about it and you don't let children learn about it in school books, it's
Yeah.
going to be repeated because you didn't learn a lesson.
We have literal Nazis walking around thinking it's
Mhm.
okay, right? Didn't learn a fucking thing.
Well, I hope the 4 children that they took in, I hope they grew up to be better people.
I hope so too. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was just because I was only looking at English language sources or what.
Yeah.
There was no mention of those kids other than there was those 4 kids.
Yeah, there wouldn't be with their blockage of news and what they censor, but I just really hope that they had a decent life because
Yeah,
that's a
me too.
lot of trauma to live with that your mother did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Next time, somebody pick a better topic.
Right?
Yes.
JT,
Dumb crime.
pick a better topic.
Less kids, more evil.
Absolutely.
Oh, well,
Ay, ay,
obviously, history didn't learn anything from your case to JT's and my case because ours were more recent. Nothing was learned.
No, not at all. Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Terry, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
You can find us at True Crime and Wine Time. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at Terry True Crime. And I think that's it.
Perfect. Well, thanks for tuning in to Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you'd like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. Money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get 1 bonus episode a month, as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters. Jay is Rad, True Crime Nana, The Faves of Our Lives, and 3 Beers In Podcast. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. All cases on Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
Are you into the spooky and macabre?
Is your inner witch dying to learn more about what makes the world magical?
Do you occasionally crave nerdy horror content from film and RPGs?
Well, have we got a podcast just for you.
Join the squad at Mission Spooky where Kiki,
JC,
And Cord.
research some of the scariest historical places from Pennsylvania.
listen to our ghost stories and legends.
Learn as we delve into the world of history, magic, and folklore.
And be entertained with our D&D 5e RPG segment, Cordverse Cryptid.
Find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and follow us on Spotify, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
And remember, stay spooky.
And don't die.
But if you do, contact us.
Beautiful.
We did it in one, baby.
I think that's fucking golden.
Yeah, we're so professional.
Rawr.
All right.
I give this a qualified rawr already.
She was born to a wealthy family that would make that and Kodabu, her former
can't-
lawyer. Oh, go ahead.
Oh my God. Sorry. That I just
Boo.